Is inflation going to continue to rise? I don't know if you've seen some of the articles recently. It actually just came out today, which is 410, that inflation kind of jumped just recently. And, it's been moving down. Or it's been kind of moving flat. You can kind of see it here on this graph. And, I think the general assumption was maybe we can get it back into that 2%. If we look at, again, maybe this graph, and this is just one article I quickly brought up, you can see going back here in 2016, it's been around that 2%, well below it some years, just slightly over, but definitely for the most part, if you can kind of visualize a line coming across here, around that 3%. And I know the Fed likes to keep it closer to 2 or under 2. And, they've done a very good job. And obviously, none of this is coming out from a political perspective. This is really just on inflation. Obviously things jumped up during the COVID years, all the way up, I think almost to 9%, which is well above normal. And then it started to come back down and it's been trailing a little bit. And I guess the goal was to get it below, obviously, but a recent jump. Now, maybe this is just a temporary jump for 1 month. Maybe it'll drop right back down with some new changes in the global space. We will have to see. But, the reason I wanted to do this is not just to say that it's going up, but how does it impact your financing? And I would say that for most of my working career, and I'm going back into that early 90s, I actually did not think about inflation that much at all. If I can look through the period, we've actually had a very long stretch of in that 2, maybe up to 3%. So I can't actually personally remember it being up at the 9s or 8s or even where we are today in some perspectives, staying above that 3% for such a long period of time. And through most of my working career, to be honest, I didn't care. A little bit of inflation I think is okay because I want to get, a 3% increase and I want then inflation to maybe go up too. So I'm, making more than inflation. These type of years, it starts getting hard when you're only getting a 3%. And if inflation stays at this percentage and stays at 3.3, my purchasing power actually decreases. And so that's why it becomes important, I think, as you get closer to retirement. For so many years, it was, I'm getting my 3%. Inflation's lower. I'm still putting money away. But now I'm at a point where I'm taking a look at it, again, more from a purchasing power perspective. And let me dive into that a little bit more. But before I do, if you get anything out of this, hit like and subscribe. I'm just talking about my own journey. And, maybe you could drop in the comment, how is inflation impacting you? Are you in the same spot where I am, where it's not that big of a deal today? But, again, I'm in my mid 50s. Does it become a problem, or is it something that you're thinking about as you get closer to your retirement perspective? So here's, I brought up this is from Dinkytown. I'll put the link in the description. You can go out here and take a look at it yourself. You can do some different numbers, and it's really looking at it from a historical perspective. And again, the whole reason I kind of look at this now is, let's say I save, and again, I'm using an example of $100,000. What is the purchasing power of that going to be? And let me actually rechange it. Let's say I want to get $100,000 out of my investment accounts so I can spend $100,000. What would the purchasing power be in 20 years? I hope to be able to retire, let's say at 65. So 75, 85, in 20 years, I have $100,000. What is it going to turn into? And so let's look at what a couple different history perspectives are to show you what the decrease is over a period of time. So again, this is as if, let's say you had $100,000 and starting in 95. And I did that because that's right around when I was starting my working career, and let's go up to 2015, because that is going to be 20 years later. What would be the purchasing power be, and it's now down to 62. So, it's almost a 40% drop in purchasing power over 20 years. But we can take other history time periods and kind of evaluate that. So this is a 40% drop, but what if we move this up to 2005 And let's move it up to today, being that 20-year span, you're going from 100 down to 58. So over 40% drop. Okay. And again, this is the whole reason I'm thinking about it, because, if I expect to have a certain amount of income coming in, if it's not adjusted for inflation, every single year, I'm going to be able to, in theory, spend less money. And, with it jumping up, obviously we had this drop right here. You can kind of see it. This is probably right around the 2001. It really dropped down. If it continues to stay like that, could it turn into what happened many, many years ago back in the 70s? And I do have that graph right here. Obviously, oh, wait a minute. I thought I brought it up. Let me actually bring it up. So let's put 19, I'm going to do 1965 to 1985. And here you can see if you were bringing in $100,000 at one point, at the end of that 20 years, you're under $28,000. That's a 70% drop from inflation. And that is what the purchasing power can really impact you. And that's why it's so important to be looking at your money and not only saying, am I getting a certain dollar amount out of my investment savings, but is it going to last through different inflation periods? And this is why they say, inflation can kill you in retirement. Because again, yes, when you're trying to get, let's say a 5% increase from your investment savings, if you are trying to grow your money, but if inflation is in that 3 or 4%, you're really only getting a 1% increase, right? And then if you get years where it drops up to 8 or 9, like it recently did, even if you're getting a 5% return, you're actually getting negative purchase power over the long term. So this is what kind of, concerned me when I saw that it jumped. Again, I'm probably not doing anything different today. I'm continuing to invest my money, save my money. But as you get closer and closer to your retirement age, this is something I'm starting to take a peek at and just say that, I definitely have to continue to try to get more from my investments than inflation. And so, again, if this stays in that over 3%, I got to make sure that I'm looking for other investment opportunities that are above that. And, holding stuff in maybe just straight cash obviously isn't helping. That's probably getting much lower. But, what are your bonds getting? What are your CDs? What are your money markets getting that need to at least meet or exceed these type of figures? So again, if you get anything out of this, how are you trying to cope with it? Hit like and subscribe. Thank you.